friends, welcome back to Carrie's Kitchen. Tonight we're cooking one of my family's favorites. I grew up my mom making vegetable beef soup. It was one of our family's favorites. It's pretty easy and it's healthy for you. So let's get started in it. So for vegetable beef soup, my mom would usually go to the grocery store and just buy whatever steak, whatever was on sale, and then bring it home, cut it up in little cubes, and brown it. So tonight we're trying to use up some of our meat in our freezer to make space and to use up some of our meat. So we got elk a while back, so I cut up elk in little bite-sized pieces, so that's what I'm going to be using instead of the typical like beef steak. But you can go to the grocery store if you don't have elk and just get kind of whatever cheap steak they may have on sale, and then just dice it up and cut it up. Or another option, a lot of times at the grocery store you can find those cubed up meat packages. It might say stir fry or it might say beef stew and the meat's already cubed up. You can use that also for this recipe. All of it is good. So I'm using elk. We had an elk, I think, tenderloin, and I chopped it up in little pieces. So what we're going to do first is we're going to put this in the pot. I have some oil heating up on the oven, so come with me. So I got a nice, woo, a little too hot. Waiting too long for my husband. So you just want to put the meat in even layer on the bottom of the pot. Any kind of soup pot will do. I have a couple tablespoons of olive oil in there. And what we want to do is we want to brown the meat and give it that good sear to it, because it locks in the flavor and the juices of the meat. So we're going to go ahead and let that brown. While that's browning, I'm adding 1 whole onion. So just a yellow onion is going to go in with the meat browning. And then I'm not going to disturb my meat. I want it to get a nice kind of crust on the outside, that searing. So I'm not going to move the meat. I'm going to let it brown, and then I'll mix it around. Cook the onions down a little bit, and then at that time we'll put some garlic in there. If you put the garlic in right away, it has a chance of burning. So I always like to put the garlic in towards the end of the cooking process, once the meat and the onions cook down a bit. So we'll just wait for this to brown up. Okay guys, we have browned the meat and the onions are cooked through. This would be a good base and a good start to like a beef stew too. This is somewhat how you start the beef stew also if you were going to make beef stew. But we're making vegetable beef soup, so the elk is somewhat cooked through. Onions are cooked through. At this point, we're going to add, I diced up 2 garlic cloves. If you want to mix that up, Sophie, mix it up for me. Be careful, don't burn yourself. So we're going to mix the garlic in at this point. Turn the heat down a little bit so we don't burn the garlic.
I don't want to mix.
You don't?
I'll mix like this.
Is it too hot for you?
Yeah.
Alright. So we'll mix that garlic in. That'll start cooking. And then at this point, we just start adding things. That's why I love soups and stews and things like that, because it's kind of, you can kind of just dump it in a pot and forget about it and let it cook, and it's wonderful. So, thank you. So at this point, I put salt, like to your liking. I think I probably did a couple teaspoons of salt, and I did some cracked pepper, again to your guys' tasting. And then I'm also going to put some Italian seasoning mix in. This has all the oregano, all those good flavors in it already. So I'm going to put, you want to shake that in, Sophie? I know you like to shake them. Probably a good tablespoon. And again, you can always, let's open that because that's not shaking out. You can always adjust, put your hand out. Okay, put that in. Perfect. Mix that around. Mix that in the meat. Yeah. Mix it all around. smells really good in here. That elk and the garlic, salt and the pepper.
I like to put it like that.
Yep, me too. That's a good way to... So now that everything is somewhat cooked through, we're going to add beef broth. And I usually don't measure out the beef broth. I like the broth to cover the meat. You're going to want either the broth, and I ran out of broth. So I only have about half of this container left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the rest with water and then add beef bouillon to kind of make that beef broth taste that I'm looking for. So Sophie, do you want to dump this in? So like I said, this is only about half a container. But if you did have more beef broth, you'd put one of these whole containers in. Get close there. All of it has to go in. And here we're building the soup. Good job.
Now I won't burn.
And now to that I'm going to add 4 cups of water.
Can I put it in?
Go ahead. It's kind of heavy, so be careful. And you want to eyeball it. I may have to put more in because that just covered the meat by a little bit. And we have to add vegetables to this yet, and also cabbage. So I think I'm going to add probably another 4 cups of water. And don't worry, because we can always build the flavors up with the beef bouillon. So we're going to put another 4 cups of water. Ooh, I'm spilling it everywhere. Ooh.
That's boiling.
Okay, mix that through. And that seems good. A good amount of liquid. I try to eyeball it. You want enough liquid in there to be able to add the vegetables to it, that there's going to be enough liquid. I'm going to just turn the heat up just a little bit to medium-high heat. And like I said, don't pick up your shirt, okay? So you always want to build on the flavor. And with soups and different pasta dishes, you always want to taste them while you're cooking and adjust the seasonings and what you want to add to it. So soups is a good one that I would taste as you go and make sure it's seasoned enough for you. Can I have it for a moment? Put your hand up. Put that in. So this is just beef bouillon. You can get it in the cubes or you can get it just in like this powder. And again, just add a little bit at a time. So I probably just did a tablespoon. And you want to add it, let it cook a little bit, then taste the broth and see if it needs more, because you can always add more but you can't take away. So you never want to add too much up front and then it'll be way too salty. So we're going to bring this up to...
Hey, I'm holding some. Down.
We're going to bring this up to a boil, and then we're going to start adding our vegetables to make it vegetable beef soup. All right, we've brought the soup up to a boil, so it's boiling. So now we're going to put a bag of mixed vegetables in. So I have ones with corn, peas, green beans, and even carrots. But this is where you can really play with it and do whatever vegetable options you want. Okay, dump it in, come on. So a whole bag of, okay, let Mama do it. Okay, you can mix it, how's that? Otherwise it splatters at you. And then the really good stuff, cabbage. I'm using a whole head of green cabbage here.
I like to eat this.
But like with cabbage, it's just like spinach. It's going to wilt down. It's going to cook down. It won't look like this much in there.
Let's cook this cabbage right down.
And again, we'll bring it up to a boil, and then we'll turn it down to a simmer and just kind of let all of this cook together.
You mix that when I do these.
Oh, okay. You get the rest of the cabbage.
Yeah.
I love cabbage. I'm a cabbage. I was raised on cabbage. I have Polish and Russian heritage. So.
And Swedish.
And Swedish. So we just grew up eating a lot of cabbage and sauerkraut and Polish sausage, kielbasa. So I love cabbage. So if you didn't like cabbage, you probably could omit it and try to put something else in there. Are you gonna get that?
Ah, woo, it's falling everywhere.
I think my mom has tried other vegetables in here. What's the vegetable they grew in their garden all the time? That my dad was obsessed with.
I don't think they grew rutabaga.
Not rutabaga. It was the other Kalahari. What is it?
That's
Kala.
not tea.
Oh my gosh, I can't think of the name. My
Kalahari.
That is
I don't
so.
know.
Okay, shh. When I'm talking, can you please not interrupt me? It's that root vegetable that you can grow in the garden. My brother would grow it, and my dad would love it. I think it was Kalahari. This kind of root vegetable. And my mom would put that in this vegetable beef soup. So you could try a lot of different options. We also would use barley. We put barley in there too for a little bit extra substance. So there's a lot of different things you could do with it. So this is the point where you do it to your taste, your liking, and kind of what you guys want to experiment with. So at this point, I'm just going to kind of push that cabbage down, give it a good mix, let that cabbage cook down and wilt down. Bring it up to a boil again, and then I'll turn it down to simmer and adjust the seasonings. So if I need to add more salt, pepper, or more bouillon, I will at that point. So this is a good soup to do on a cold day in the fall or in the winter, or just whenever you're in the mood for it. So I'll meet you back here and I'll show you how we dish it up and how it tastes. Okay, so I forgot to tell you guys, making the soup, you were supposed to add crushed tomatoes or diced tomatoes, the tomato component of the soup. So, of course, because it's Friday and I'm already on the weekend. So, we have canned tomatoes. We can these out of our garden, so I'm going to use this up. If you don't have that, crushed tomatoes, diced tomatoes, whatever you got on hand will work. And I'm also going to put a little tomato paste in it also. So I'm like tasting it, I'm looking at it, I'm like, it looks different, it tastes different. And I completely forgot that you got to add the tomato part. So, my fault. So, I'm going to add this big can of, we have just whole tomatoes in here that we canned. And I'm just going to kind of crush them up with my hand. They're pretty soft, so it's kind of like, you can hold it, baby, if you want, like a crushed tomato. And then, like I said, we're going to add some tomato paste in there also.
Can I put that stuff in?
Okay. You can't be afraid to take it. If you want to do it, you gotta get in there and do it. So this is how my mom made it. She would make put crushed tomatoes or diced tomatoes, tomato paste in there. Now it's starting to look like vegetable beef soup. It's got the redness and the tomatoes in it. I was like, something is missing. Oh, yay. I'm like, not with it today, guys. So I did taste it after it was sitting here simmering for a while. And I did have to add a little bit more salt and pepper and a little bit more bouillon. So I did do that. So again, taste as you're cooking and adjust the seasonings to your liking. So always, what my mom did and what I do, when I'm cooking anything with tomato in it like this, I will add a little sugar to it. Just to cut the tomato-ness of the dish. So, at this point I'm just going to put a little sugar in it.
Can I put the sugar in?
Which I don't know where my sugar is, so. I'm actually going to just put a little of this monk fruit in. Like a spoonful of it. Put in there. Okay.
Is that sugar?
Stir it in there. Yep. And as anybody who knows who's watching their carbs or that are on keto, this is monk fruit, so it doesn't have the carbs and the sugar component to it, like regular sugar, so it has no carbs, no calories, no fat. So I put a good heaping
I'm
tablespoon in there.
shredding. I cannot do this.
So, because I don't want to put the sugar in it, because we're all trying to be healthier, right? So, I'm going to let this simmer for a while, let the cabbage cook down a little bit more. Let those flavors marry together, and then it will be time to eat. So here's the finished product. We have a vegetable beef soup. Instead of beef, we used elk and put a whole bunch of vegetables and cabbage, and we put crushed tomatoes in there and salt and pepper, Italian seasoning, and it's so good, you guys, and it'll be great for leftovers through the week. It's a really good comfort food. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you guys keep on cooking. Thank you.